Was to hook your reader into your essay and grab their attention right away, like straight from the first sentence. And it's so important because this sentence determines whether or not your reader is immediately engaged in your essay. And it actually should be unrelated to the main topic of your essay, which we'll get into a few slides later. So what is a good hook? Despite contrary belief, your hook should not be a statistic, a question, a quote, a date or time, or a cliche. Unless your teacher says so, of course. I know for a lot of high school AP courses like AP Research and AP Seminar, I think you have to start it with a statistic, but I wouldn't recommend it for like anything else, like a regular essay in school or like a college application, because it usually, these types of hooks give away the topic of the essay, which you should not do because it's your very first sentence. You don't want to reveal everything all at once. It should be kind of, suspenseful. Your reader doesn't know what you're going to talk about. And it should be at first glance glance unrelated to the rest of your essay. Think of a good hook as being an unexpected or compelling comparison to something, a controversial statement that challenges but does not offend, or you should lead with a relevant but engaging anecdote, which is like a short story. So questions to ask yourself if a hook is good or not is, does the first sentence make you want to read more of the essay or does it not? And do you know from the beginning, like the first sentence, what this essay is going to be about? And your answer to the first one should obviously be yes, but your answer to the second one should be no, you don't know what it's going to be about from the very first sentence. So we're gonna do some examples now. So an example prompt I have here is write a well-structured essay about a role model in your life. And I chose this one because I believe it's such a common essay. I've written at least 5 of these in my whole, school career. Yeah, it's gotten kind of boring, honestly. And it's just so common. I thought it'd be a nice way to start. So does anyone know what the main point one would be making in an essay with this prompt? So what are they trying to say? Like, what is their claim or thesis?
Describing the role model in their life.
Yeah, great job. So they're trying to, tell the audience, yep, how the role model affected you. Great. So how someone in their life positively influenced them is a role model to them. So if this is what they're trying to say, their first sentence should not be giving this away, because if that's your main point, you should not be saying in the very, very first sentence of your introduction. And that's what you save for later, which we're gonna go over later. So now based on this prompt, we're gonna go over a few example hooks. And you guys are going to tell me if you think it's a good hook or a bad hook based on these 2 questions that we just went over. All right, so example 1. To this day, I can't deny that one of the most influential people in my life is my grandma. So do you guys think this is a good hook or not a very good hook? All right, good job, guys. I see a lot of no, and you guys are right, because we just said that what someone is trying to say in this essay is how someone in their life positively influenced them or is a role model to them. And this sentence, keep in mind that this is the very first sentence this person put in their essay. They give everything away. You know who it's about, you know what the essay is about. It's about the most influential people in your life. And it just, your teacher, someone's going to read this and be like, oh, okay, it's about their grandma. I know what to expect. It just not fun. If it was yes, Derek, you're right. If it was a thesis statement, it would be very good. But as a hook, it's very weak because it gives everything away at once. All right. Second example. Oh, yep. And there's your big X right there. Example 2. I used to think that I would be happy doing any job that would make a lot of money. So do you guys think it's a good hook or a bad hook? All right, I see some of you saying it's pretty good. I see your point, Derek, but we're gonna go over the hook actually should be kind of out there. And I'll explain that later when we get to more of the filling, but it should be pretty unrelated to your essay, and I'll explain why. And you guys are right, it is a pretty good hook. It doesn't give who it's about away. You know, you don't know who it's about, you don't know what they're trying to say. Like this has nothing to do with role models or influential people. So I think it's pretty good.
I would assume like that hook would kind of be kind of about like the role model of the person writing the essay could be somebody who makes a lot of money.
I see your point. No, you're right. It's not, I wouldn't say it's the best hook, but it's much better than like saying, oh, my grandma is the most influential person in my life. Yeah. Although you can kind of see how it could maybe connect to who this would be about or like someone's thesis, it's not obvious. You know, it could be their mom, their dad, their siblings, their friends, their someone that's not even related to them. So yeah, that's why that would work. Okay, third example. Some people think having a brother is a curse. Others think it is a gift. So what do you guys think of this one? All right, I see some of you guys saying, I see a lot of mixed opinions here. Most of you guys are saying it's okay, it's not great, it's not good. I would actually say that this is not a very good hook because, first of all, you kind of know what it's going to be about. You know it's about their brother. And second of all, it's a cliche. It's a cliche because, you know, I have a sister and I always say some people think it's a blessing, some people thinks it's a curse. And the problem with starting with a cliche is that it's not original. I've gotten multiple points taken off on papers for I thought it was a good I thought it was a good hook and I thought I connected it really well to my thesis, but my teacher said it's a cliche. It's too, you know, common. Other people have used this as their first sentence, so it's just not original. And I was really sad about it. But yeah, I also had a really strict teacher. Some of your teachers you might be able to get away with it, but honestly, I wouldn't risk it. All right, so this one gets a no. All right, what about this one? I could hear the pain in my dad's voice when he said, "Your mom wants me to move out." All right, I see a lot of you guys are saying good, and I agree. It's it's good because you know how in the last example it mentions the brother? Here you can see it mentions the dad and the mom, and you can like my first reaction to this was, oh, it's probably about the dad, but now that I think about it, it could kind of be about anyone. You can see that this person is going through a lot at home, so it could be about their dad, their mom, how their siblings dealt with it, how maybe their grandparents dealt with it, their cousins. You know, you don't know. One might assume that it's about the dad, but that may not be the case. And also, this this sentence as a hook, it elicits emotion. It makes the audience feel and it makes them feel sad, and that's a very important literary technique that we'll discuss in a later class. But I would say that's a Very good hook. All right, last one. I am like a badger. I prefer my burrow. What do you guys think of this one? I would actually think, I would say that this is a good hook. You guys might think it's a cliche, but I mean, I don't know. I've never heard of someone referring, I've never heard the cliche, a badger is like prefers their burrow. I feel like more cliche is like, oh, I've always felt different in my own skin, or something like, oh, roses are red, violets are blue. Like super, super overused. I've never really heard this, and it's also this hook is, in my opinion, good because they use a simile. They compare themselves to a badger who prefers their burrow, and they don't reveal anything about who it might be about. So you don't know who it's about. You don't know where this is kind of going, and you just got to read on to see what they're going to talk about, who they're going to talk about. So I would say this is a good one. I feel like for cliches, it has to be like way more cliche than this one. I've actually never heard this as a saying or a cliche. Is a literary device always good hook? I would say it'd be nice to incorporate it, but like not always. It depends on what it is, of course. So this one works, for example, but yeah, Derek's right. It gives more color to your hook. Literary devices such as like maybe imagery would be really nice because it creates a picture in their head. But we'll go over that in some later classes. It really depends on how you like phrase it and what your literary device is. But I would say it does add some, more spice. All right, what's next? So that's a good one. All right, and then we're gonna go into the filling. So what is the filling? The filling should connect your seemingly unrelated hook, which is your first sentence, to your thesis, your last sentence. And it's like the filling of a sandwich or a pie. It connects everything together. And in just a few sentences, you must connect your, unrelated hook to your related thesis. And it's really hard to. So I think of it as like, I don't know how many of you can drive, but like when you're kind of like going in the wrong direction when you're driving and you realize, oh no, I'm going the wrong direction, that's kind of like your hook, because like your hook is unrelated. It doesn't reveal anything about what your essay is actually about. So you must now connect it. You must get to your destination. So you kind of just, you turn your wheel and you kind of do a full 180 into the right direction. And that's what kind of the filling is. You're kind of like turning from this unrelatedness into relatedness, if that makes sense. So here's an example I wrote. So based on the prompt we kind of just focused on for the hook. So the hook is, contrary to popular belief, McDonald's was my favorite place to eat when I was younger. And if my thesis is, my mom has been the most influential and important person in my life, as she always encourages me to be my true self and supports me through all of the ups and downs of my life. And an example filling might be, while carrying McNuggets in an Oreo McFlurry, I slid into a booth and waited for another person to join me on the other side. Soon enough, another person came, my mom. We would spend almost an hour in the small booth sharing fries, conversations, and laughs while inhaling the scent of burgers and cookies and listening to the dull chatter of people around us. Those weekends hold some of my favorite memories of my childhood. Just my mother and I having a good time in an unexpected place. So that's just an example. You're kind of like, you might think, oh, how does McDonald's have to do with an influential person in my life? And that's kind of, you see in the filling, like this person kind of like really turns it around, in a complete 180 direction, if that makes sense. All right, and then we're going to focus on the last part of the introduction, which is your thesis or your claim. And so a thesis statement is defined as a statement that clearly identifies the topic being discussed, includes the points discussed in the paper, and is written for a specific audience. So your thesis or claim should be the last sentence of your introduction. I've seen people split their thesis statement into 2 sentences, and it's the last 2 sentences of their introduction, but that's kind of iffy for me. It's most teachers require it to be 1. And this thesis or claim answers your question. So what is your point with this essay? What are you trying to say? Why are you writing this essay? And it usually lists the main points, which is 3 that you're going to go over in your essay, but it isn't mandatory. Like I've never really had points off taken. Like sometimes I list the reasons why, and sometimes I don't. It really depends. So some examples here at the bottom is, contrary to assumptions, teenagers should be allowed to read YA novels, no matter how explicit they are. And then a example of thesis with like the list, kind of the listing technique, is Hurricane Sandy was the most destructive hurricane New York City had ever seen because of its high wind speeds, extreme flooding, and the fact that it was a mixed storm of both summer and winter conditions. So you see the listing, the high wind speeds, extreme flooding, mixed storm, and people like to do this so it like kind of sets the stage for their 3 body paragraphs, which we'll go over next week. But it's not mandatory. You can if you want. Your teacher might require it. Mine have never. So I just kind of do whatever. You think Derek thinks thesis shouldn't list the main points because it's good things. I agree, but I've seen many people, but like you see with your thesis, you kind of want to let your readers know what you're going to talk about. But yeah, you can leave the listing off if you want. It does depend. I've had, in a few papers actually, I've had teachers recommend that we do list it. It's like kind of like an organizational strategy. So like listing them, I've listed them in my thesis before and then I deleted it in the final paper. It's just kind of like because it's like 3 things in a list, it kind of sets the stage for like your body paragraphs and makes it way easier to organize in your head what you're going to write about in your body paragraphs, because it sets like the main idea of each paragraph, but it does depend. So all right, so here's some more example theses. And so we have 2 sides here, and you guys are going to tell me which side are the good theses and which side are the bad theses. So Columbus Day should not be recognized in the United States for several reasons. Columbus's treatment of Native Americans, his impact on indigenous cultures, and his false status as the discoverer of the Americas do not merit a day of national celebration. Then we have Americans should stop celebrating Columbus Day because he hurt Native Americans. Moving to the bottom, Columbus Day is a federal holiday and national day of recognition that should continue because Columbus's unwavering pursuit of discovery and unparalleled sense of adventure created the necessary circumstances for American exploration and settlement. Then we have Columbus Day should be a holiday because students enjoy having a day off from school. So which side, either left or right, has the good theses and which one has the bad ones? Yep, I think this one's pretty obvious, left. The left ones here, they do state the reasons, but you could kind of just, you could cut it off, but the ones on the right, they're just so generic. They're just like, they're very also informal, like, oh, it should be a holiday because students enjoy having a day off from school, and that's like the only reason. Your thesis should be strong. It doesn't necessarily have to list the reasons, but it has to be strong. Never say I think or I believe, or just in general, don't use I in your essays unless it's like a personal essay, of course, but you never want to use I think because that makes you sound unsure to the reader and you never ever want that. All right, so we're gonna move into some examples. Let's put it all together. So the prompt here was, how did you leave your mark on the world this school year? And so, all right, so I'm just going to read it, and I highlighted every single, like the different parts of the introduction, book, filling, thesis, and you guys can just see how it should come together. Every time someone walks on the beach, they leave their footprints behind on the sand. I remember when I was little, I would see how long it took for the waves to wash my footprints away. It would only take a second or two, and then they would be gone forever. Now that we're nearing summer, hundreds of people are going to visit beaches every single day, and the beach is littered with all kinds of imprints. But at the end of the day, none of them manage to linger behind. Footprints on the beach are evanescent. But the impact every single person here makes in the world is not. The way people impact others is not transitory. It sticks with them for days, months, years, or even a lifetime. We have all made contributions that have shaped people, organizations, and places other than ourselves. From my family to my siblings to complete strangers, I have made my mark on the world in a myriad of ways. So you can kind of see how, with a lot of hooks, like it's really hard coming up with like a super good hook that like the reader has literally no idea what it's going to be about, especially if they already know the prompt. Like I've told you the prompt here, how did you leave your mark on the world this school year? And like I'm sure some of you, when I read the hook, you were like, oh, I can kind of see how it would relate to, the prompt. It's really hard to, especially if they know the prompt. Like teachers, they're gonna assign you an essay and they already know the prompt, but as long as it's not straight out like, I left my mark on the world this year. Like if it's not something like that, then it should be fine. It's really hard to come up with like a super uh, good hook that like the reader will have no idea what you're trying to say. And it shouldn't be like that confusing. Like if it takes you more than like 5 to 7 sentences to like link it all together, then like it's probably kind of really unrelated. I remember with this prompt, someone in my class used Play-Doh as their first sentence, and it was kind of a stretch, but he like put it together really well. So if you can make it work, definitely go with like a riskier kind of hook. But if you want to play it safe, then I would go with something that's like slightly predictable, but like not really. All right, here's another one. So this prompt was, does a certain book belong on Amazon's 100 books to read in your lifetime list? The library was my safe haven as a child. When I was younger, I was an avid reader and I went to the public library so often it became my second home. I read book after book, series after series. I can't remember a single day that I went without reading. However, as we got older, my classmates gradually lost their interest in reading, and soon enough, I followed in their footsteps. After 6th grade, reading became a burden in my life. I lacked the interest to keep reading on my own time, and before I knew it, I was only reading books that were mandatory for school. When this project was assigned, I mentally groaned at the fact that I had to read another book assigned for school, since they're usually dull and uninteresting. I chose the book The Princess Bride on a whim since the book I already wanted was already taken. That was one of the best decisions or greatest decisions I've ever made in my life. Once I started reading it, I couldn't put it down. I was hooked. There's no doubt in my mind that The Princess Bride should belong on Amazon's 100 books to read in your lifetime list. So I would say actually this hook isn't the best, but I wanted you guys to see how, this is an anecdote of this person's life. It's a story. It kind of walks you through how events in their life relates to this prompt. And you can always do that. It doesn't have to be like, you don't have to start off with something like super strange like volcanoes. It can be a story. So I just want you guys to see that in this example. All right, so some key takeaways for today is 1, your goal is to keep your reader engaged in your essay. So think of your audience as a 10-year-old with an attention span of about 5 seconds. So your goal is to always make sure to keep them engaged, like really spice it up, like then to follow the following format: hook, filling to your thesis. And always remember the hook is probably the most important line in your entire essay. It's supposed to catch the eye of your reader like at first glance because it's the very first sentence. So I would say if you were to spend like the most time on your hook, and then after you get your hook, everything else just kind of flows really nicely. I would say focus on the hook and the thesis a ton. And a few things to remember. To get better at essay writing takes a lot of time, but remember, practice makes perfect. And don't feel discouraged if you can't come up with a good hook right away. It takes a lot of time and some creativity and just a little bit of imagination. I remember I struggled so hard because like 10th grade was like the first year that like my teacher really required, hooks. Like before that, I just kind of wrote whatever I wanted for my first sentence. And it took me a long, long time to get the hang of it. And I still struggle with it sometimes. But, what I do is I kind of shut my laptop and I just kind of go on with my daily life. Take a break from thinking, and the best ideas and inspiration comes from your everyday life. So you could just be like kind of sitting there eating some cereal and an idea might come to you. So never give up, And again, as I cannot stress this enough, practice, practice, practice. It's the only way to get better at writing. So thank you guys for coming today and watching. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach me at this email. I'll also put on the classroom. I'm going to, after this class, I'm going to put an assignment, remember it's optional, on a classroom. And it's basically, you can choose any one of 3 prompts and you just have to write an intro to it. And 2 of them were based on, like what we went over in class, like examples. Like one of them is, write an introduction about a role model, or write an introduction about your the impact you had on the world. So yeah, and next week we'll be focusing on, body paragraphs and transitions and specifically. So yeah, thanks for coming.
Thank you.